U.S. automakers have been granted a one-month exemption from tariffs after administration officials spoke with industry CEOs yesterday. Those tariffs would have raised the cost of a new car potentially by as much as $12,000. That's according to analysis from the Anderson Economic Group. Agriculture products, they could also earn an exemption soon. That's according to the latest from the U.S. Agriculture Secretary. But there are more tariffs to come potentially. Steel and aluminum, they're scheduled for March 12th. Reciprocal levies are set to begin next month on April 2nd. Joining me now to help make sense of this is Paul Krugman. He's a Nobel Prize-winning economist, also author of the Substack, Paul Krugman. Paul, it's great to have you back here with us. So I'm curious, obviously we've been talking a lot about this week, the threat of these tariffs or the follow through that we've seen of the tariffs, how big of a risk this poses here to the U.S. economy. What do you think?
Well, it's a huge risk. I mean, the tariffs on Canada and Mexico, if you had to choose among places to have a trade war with, that would be kind of the worst because we have, there really is no such thing as U.S. manufacturing anymore. There's North American manufacturing. It's a deeply integrated manufacturing complex that sprawls across both our northern and our southern border. And here you have, yesterday, tariffs announced that are hugely disruptive to these very complex supply chains. Now we have a month pause, but in a way, this on again, off again, who knows what tomorrow will bring is almost worse than just having the tariffs. I mean, think of yourself as a auto company executive trying to plan. If you knew that we were going to have these tariffs, then you start a crash program to try and unwind the interdependencies among production among the three countries. But then maybe we don't have the tariffs, or maybe the tariffs are coming next month, or maybe they'll be on again and off again, and that just freezes you in position. This is almost pessimal. It's almost the worst thing you can do is to have destructive tariffs that may or may not happen.
Is there a winner in a trade war?
It's really generally not. I mean, trade, the reason we trade is that trade is mutually beneficial. We trade, if you look at our trade with Canada, first of all, there's a lot of economies of scale in not having separate plants for separate markets, so that we can do a lot of specialization. A lot of what we buy from Canada, we have a trade surplus with Canada outside energy, but we get oil and electricity. Hydropower from Canada, and that's beneficial to us because they have the resources. It's beneficial to them because they earn stuff. So a trade war that disrupts all of this just raises costs, increases inefficiency. Trump has managed actually to have tariffs on manufactured goods that will probably reduce manufacturing employment because so much of what is involved here is actually inputs. We're talking about auto parts, we're talking about steel and aluminum. These are things that are actually going to raise the cost of manufacturing in the United States to an extent that it does more damage than any protection you get from foreign competition.
Paul, it's really interesting. I guess when you're thinking about the effect on employment just beyond the auto industry, what do you think that could look like?
Well, the general rule is that in the medium run, employment's going to be what it's going to be. It's determined by the labor supply, and the Fed will do whatever it takes. If we're thinking about the short run, I think that the uncertainty that we're creating here is the dominant thing. I mean, if you have a business that has any kind of investment plans that depend on what the trade policy regime is going to be. What are the tariffs going to be? Who are we going to be having a trade war with? Because, the EU is probably next in line. What you probably do is pause. You sit on your hands. Why commit to an irreversible investment when you just don't know what the environment is going to look like? So that is, I still don't think a recession in the U.S. is the most likely case in the near term. But if you were going to try and set up conditions for one, this would be it.
Paul, how are you thinking about some of these retaliation measures? And I bring that up on the heels of some of the commentary that we got from the CEO of Brown-Forman yesterday following their earnings. And he was talking about the fact that Canada is actually pulling U.S. alcohol right now from their shelves is, quote, worse than a tariff in his view. So I guess putting that into context and adding to that uncertainty here for U.S. business leaders, what does the ripple effects of that potentially look like?
Oh, sure. I mean, first of all, the United States exports a lot to our neighbors, right? We do run a trade deficit with both of them, but that doesn't mean that we don't have a lot of sales there. And ordinarily, you would say the calculus is the U.S. is a big economy. And so even if there's costs on both sides, they're much smaller proportionately for the U.S. And so the U.S. is probably, normally you would think that the U.S. would be more ready to hang tough, except that, our neighbors are furious, booing the U.S. national anthem. Every time that Trump calls the Prime Minister of Canada, Governor Trudeau, he's weakening, he's rallying the Canadian public against the U.S. So it's going to be retaliation. And one thing that I don't think the Trump people have fully realized is that tariffs aren't the only thing that you can do if you're in a trade war, if you're trying to hurt the other guy to try and force a change in policy. You can also try to restrict exports. The Premier of Ontario has already said he's going to put a 25% tax on electricity imports to the United States, and he says he'll do it with a smile on his face. Now, whether he can actually do that, whether that's happening, whether Alberta's Midwestern oil refineries are very heavily dependent on oil from the Athabasca tar sands. If the Canadians start to restrict or put taxes on those, they can do a lot of damage to the U.S. I mean, Canada will be hurt for sure, but the Canadians are, they're mad as hell and not going to take it any longer. And so this is not a conducive situation for avoiding a lot of damage.
Paul, I want to turn to the White House crypto summit that we are going to see here tomorrow. And I bring that up because you just published a Substack earlier this morning kind of talking about President Trump's plan here for the strategic crypto reserve. And I think it's fair to say, at the minimum, that you're a bit skeptical just in terms of what this looks like, how this will be funded, the point of it. Why are you so skeptical of this effort?
Okay, I've been in many, many crypto meetings. Sometimes people, trying to understand what it's for, sometimes going to crypto conferences where I'm the designated enemy. Crypto is not a new technology. Bitcoin was introduced in 2009, and we still have no major legal use cases for it. There's essentially no legitimate transaction that you can carry out using crypto. To the extent that crypto is in widespread use, it's almost entirely for criminal activities, money laundering, extortion payments. Why are we doing this? You could say, well, look at the price, and it's true that people have bought crypto and driven the prices way up. But you ask, well, why are we investing in something where it's still not at all clear what the point is, and what does it even mean to have a crypto reserve? It's not like a reserve of oil that you can use if there's a cutoff of oil and we can extract some strategic petroleum reserve oil to fuel the economy. Crypto is just ones and zeros on a computer, and it's not really clear what you do with it. Apparently North Korea has been pulling off some big crypto heists, so I guess we can use it to bribe Kim Jong-un. This is the most oddest thing. We're establishing a reserve of something that sort of doesn't really exist and doesn't have any clear uses, and yet we're going to spend, if Trump can get the authorization, which is not clear, but we're going to spend tens of billions of dollars of taxpayer money on acquiring something that is kind of virtual. It doesn't really even really exist.
All right, Paul, wish we had more time. I'm sure there'd be a lot of pushback from those within the industry. Obviously, looking forward to continuing this conversation in the future. Paul Krugman, thanks so much.
Thanks a lot.